Well, good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon session. I'm going to invite you in. If you haven't taken a seat just yet, come on in, take a seat and get comfortable. This afternoon session is going to be a little bit more interactive, a little bit more practical. We have a couple of handouts that we will distribute to you. There are pencils in the back of the pew in front of you, so you'll be able to engage with the work pages that are handed out. If you need one, if the pencil for some reason is not sharp, just raise your hand. But they're usually sharp, so yeah, we'll see. All right. Before I give the time back to Eddy, I want to invite you to just bow your heads with me. Let's say a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for just the love that you have for us, and that all a part of who we are, that Lord, that you are not just interested in our physical well-being or our spiritual well-being, but that you are interested in our emotional and our mental well-being as well, and that you have designed us so beautifully, so intricately. And I just pray that you will continue to open our eyes to these little windows into the working of our systems. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. For the online audience, I forgot to mention this. For the online audience, if you are interested in receiving any of the handouts, we don't have a way to get that to you like immediately, but if you text the number that Luke's going to put on the screen there, if you text that number, which for you in the audience, that would be the number in the program, the 833 number. But if you text that number, if you just text your name and the word guide, I will send that to you later this afternoon. So if you're interested in receiving that. All right, Eddy, the time's yours.
All right, we're online. If it's all right, I'm going to hang out with y'all down here for the rest of the day. Lily, I'm going to put your guitar picks right here, if that's all right. By the way, if it's cold in here, I heard word that it's because of Jeff that it's cold. So
we do that for special guests from Seattle. You're not from here, are you?
Nope. He said he was like opening windows here when there's snow on the ground. So I don't know. I didn't also. I wasn't processing, but you know, I guess that's the way y'all do things here. All right. It's really good to be with you all. I'm excited to dive into some more of like the meat of what we came here to do this weekend. This morning was more of a don't want to overwhelm. Let's look at big picture. And this afternoon, we really just get to dive in. This is going to be more interactive. So if you have questions, like please raise your hand as I'm going along at any time. We're in a classroom learning together. And so, and any times you have questions or comments, I welcome them. We're going to, I'm excited to dive in. As we get started, one thing that's really important, and I'm going to go into this momentarily here, is recognizing that our trauma lives in the body. It's not something that's just cognitive. And we're going to dive into all of what that means. But the first step that I want to practice with you all is ways to ground ourselves if at any time in this moment, or really at any point in your life, things become overwhelming and you start maybe re-experiencing or reliving a traumatic experience that might have happened recently, decades ago, in this moment, it's important that we have tools to bring your body back into the safety of here and now, because that's how trauma works, is when you are in a trauma response, your body is not thinking about date and time. It's as if it's happening in the here and now. And so we're going to practice some things together. Some of it may be the first time, and so it may feel maybe awkward or uncomfortable to you. I'm hoping that you're all ready to play ball and try the uncomfortable, try the awkward, even if you're not used to it. Before we start practicing a few things together, I'm curious to hear what helps you feel grounded when you feel overwhelmed. And you can just,
I find that in going into the Word really helps.
Yeah, going into the Word over here. Deep breathing. Yeah.
Going outside.
Being outside in nature. Although I don't know how much outside I want to be here. Yeah.
The sun is out, so it's okay. I have to separate myself.
Separate yourself. Yeah. Yes.
I have a simple activity that I do, which is puzzles, but something that takes you and puts you in a place where you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Helps to ground you.
Sounds very mindful, right? Doing a puzzle kind of forces you to slow down and be here and now. Yeah.
Sometimes I repeat out loud things I'm seeing or exactly.
Yeah. We're going to do one actually the first one we'll practice together is kind of similar to that.
I do a bend, sometimes I just do a bending prayer. Just, God, here's what's bothering me. I just gotta get
Just getting it out. Yeah. Anybody else? Going on a run? You're being voluntold.
She said that laughter isn't on there, so
Laughter. Yeah.
yeah. Laughter.
Yeah. Laughter is good medicine. Anybody else?
So is crying.
So is crying. Thank you, Delilah. I got to sit with Delilah and Gary at lunch. I learned so much about them. I learned that Delilah just recently retired because she was forced to. So I'm glad that you're finally able to get your well-deserved rest and break.
exercise too. Would be another one.
Exercise, yes. Anybody else? These are all really great ways that you already have some really good internal tools that you're using. So we're going to practice a few together. The first one that we're going to do together is called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. I'll guide you through it. You may have done this before. You may have not. We're going to start by doing some deep breathing together, which I'll guide you through. And then we'll tune into our 5 senses. That's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 piece of it. So I'm actually going to borrow this stool over here so that I can sit down with you and do this with you. But if it feels comfortable for you, I'll invite you to close your eyes. If that doesn't feel comfortable, that's fine. You can keep a soft gaze in front of you. We'll just start by doing some deep breaths in through the nose. And let's hold it. And breathe out through the mouth. And breathe in. Hold. And breathe out. As you continue breathing, just notice where your body's making contact with the chair. Make yourself comfortable. I like to sit up tall to allow room in my body to breathe. Notice any areas of tension, maybe your shoulders or your neck, your forehead or your jaw, and see if you can give them permission to relax in this moment. It's normal in these pauses for thoughts to come and go, and that's okay. See if you can welcome them without judgment as good or bad, but just simply noticing what is. Let's continue breathing together in through the nose. And hold. And breathe out through the mouth. And breathe in. And hold. And breathe out. And breathe in. And hold. And out. And in. Hold. And breathe out. Let's do one more deep breath in. And hold. And breathe out. When you're ready, I'll invite you to open your eyes and bring your awareness back to the space. And see if you can find 5 things in this room that you can see with your eyes. And you don't have to name them out loud, but just notice them and count them off. 5 things that you can see. Give you a few moments to do that. And once you've done that, what about 4 things that you can feel or touch? And what about 3 things that you can hear?
She helped me.
What about 2 things that you can smell, or perhaps memories of recent smells? I see some people sniffing each other. That was not a part of the exercise.
I'd like to know who that was so I can stay away.
I ain't no snitch. What about one thing that you can taste? It could also be a memory of a recent meal, like the one we just shared. Now that we've worked through the 5 senses, I'll invite you to close your eyes with me once again, and we'll end with a few collective deep breaths. Breathing in through the nose, and hold, and breathe out. And breathe in, and hold, and breathe out. And one more deep breath in, and out. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. I'm curious to hear, how was that experience for Anyone who would like to share? Very calming. Ready for a nap? Uh-oh, I put you all to sleep at the beginning. That's not good. Should have done this at the end.
If you hypnotize us all, it won't matter.
I think there was an open sense of, or just, let me say that for the purpose. I think I can think a little bit clearer, just because of the calmness and actually responding to the
Yeah. So some clarity, yeah.
People here because of the same thing, so I think it's a respective thing of each other. That's kind of what I, felt about it. I just think that we all can learn a lot from each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that healing happens in community. I don't think we're meant to heal alone. I think that's something that that's part of being made in God's image, because God exists in community and relationship. And so I think we bear that, and that our healing also comes in community, not in isolation.
Hardwired for each other. Just hardwired for those things.
Yeah. Anyone else? How was the experience for you? Yes.
It gives me something to focus my brain on.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives me that quiet, restful feeling where I don't have things playing in my mind.
Yeah. It kind of turns down the noise just a little bit.
I don't have a nothing box. So it's a nice way to just kind of rest in my brain.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. So that's one exercise, and there are many different of these more body-based exercises. And I'll talk in a few slides from now why it's important that we have these more body-based exercises as a way to process trauma rather than only the cognitive approach. But we're in the learning and practicing phase right now, so we're going to practice another one together. So I hope you're all, again, in it to win it with me, ready to play ball. We have a few of these, and I'm taking my time to go through this because this step is so important. And so it's not one that I want to rush through. So the next one that we're going to practice together, and these tools, by the way, I hope that they're things that you can take with you, because it is something that you will have access to, right? No matter where you are, you always have access to your breath, right? To slow down and breathe in. And this is simple way to remember this is that you're just moving through the 5 senses as a way to bring yourself back into the present moment when things start feeling maybe too soon, too much, or too fast. And so so I hope you take these with you, and you can use them today. If things start feeling that way, you can use them anywhere else in your life. So the next one that we'll do together is called a progressive muscle relaxation. And so this one, participate only, not to the point where things feel uncomfortable or painful in your body. And so the point is not to cause yourself physical pain, but more so we're focusing now on just one sense, which is more of like physical sensation. We're going to go through, starting from the top all the way down to our toes, where we're going to progressively work through each segment of our bodies, where on the in-breath, I'm going to invite you to tense that muscle, and on the out-breath, you'll relax that muscle. And so when you do tense and you're holding the tension, don't squeeze so hard that you cause yourself physical pain, only as much as is comfortable for your body. So, any questions on that before we dive into it? All right, let's do it. As if you feel comfortable, I invite you again to close your eyes or keep a soft gaze in front of you. And we'll start again with some deep breaths, breathing in And breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. And breathe in. And breathe out. As you continue breathing on your own, I'll invite you to take inventory on just any sensations you're noticing in your body. I know for me, I tend to notice tension in my shoulders because that's where I tend to carry my stress. See if you can notice where you carry. We're going to start with the head and neck and jaw region. On the in-breath, I'll invite you to squeeze. So let's breathe in together and squeeze those muscles. You can tense your shoulders or scrunch your neck if that helps. We'll hold it at the top. And on the out-breath, relax. And in between each, we'll take a moment to just notice what that felt like, any sensations that come up. Next, we'll move to your arms. If it is helpful, you can ball up your hands into a fist. And on the in-breath, we're going to tense our arms as hard as it feels comfortable, breathing in. And hold it. And on the out-breath, relax. And just notice. Next, we'll move to our torso. On the in-breath, we'll all squeeze our six-pack abs, breathing in. And hold it. And on the out-breath, breathe out and relax. And just notice. Next, we'll move to our legs, but just our quads to begin with. On the in-breath, squeezing as hard as it feels comfortable. And hold it. And on the out-breath, relax. Next, we'll do our feet and our calf muscles. I like to curl my toes on this one. So if that feels accessible to you, on the in-breath, squeeze. And hold it. And breathe out and relax. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes. How was that experience?
I know you hold your tension a lot.
Yeah, anyone notice any pain points? Or I know for me, it's in my shoulders that I tend to carry. Yeah. Anyone else, how was that experience for you? It was interesting.
Very relaxing.
Relaxing. Yeah. Hey, I'll take interesting. Anybody else?
It was a little stressful for me.
It's stressful.
A little stressful.
Yeah.
I had to think too much.
Yeah.
I had to like, okay, do the calves.
A lot to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a hard time too. For my, it's just trying to breathe in intense and sometimes maybe not coordinate that perspective.
It's easier if you're laying down.
Yeah, this is one, I like that you pointed this out. We're sitting down, but you can do this laying down, you can do it standing up. So, yeah.
For me, there was relief.
Relief. Yeah.
I had a stiff neck before and I still have a stiff neck. One of those stiff neck people.
So maybe scheduling a massage might be a good
Doesn't help.
good move.
I have to practice.
Yeah.
It's fusing.
This part of the reason why we're practicing different ones is that not all of them work for everybody. Some may work for you and some may not, and that's okay. That's why we want to have different tools in our toolbox and take what works and leave what doesn't. Yeah. Anyone else before I move on to our next exercise? Yeah.
I had a question. So doing this kind of stuff, you're saying really actually will help you to relax and to better deal with whatever's stressing you out all the time?
It's a way, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it's a way when we'll talk about how traumatic energy is not cognitive, it lives in the body. It's a way that allows us to access that part without becoming so overwhelmed and re-traumatizing ourselves as we're maybe processing or dealing with painful stories. Sometimes, if you've ever seen an animal like in the wild that was under attack and it plays dead, right? It goes stiff and falls over, and that's their nervous system, right? Initiating a trauma response. For them, it happened to be freeze. And if they survive the ordeal, you see them get up and they shake their entire body violently, right? That's their body physically completing the trauma response cycle to move that energy so that it doesn't stay stuck in the body. For many of us, when we go through a difficult experience, sometimes that energy gets completed and it's fine. You move on and it's not a big deal. Other times it isn't. And so these are tools that help you to access that because it's more than just trying to attack it from a cognitive perspective. So I'm getting ahead of myself though. Like I will get into that. Yeah.
This is the whole body thing. That really, I mean, that's pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
You know? It's pretty remarkable what we can do if we put our minds to it.
Yeah, the human body is amazing. I think the way that God designed these natural protective measures that we have. Yeah. Okay. Are you ready for another one? I haven't lost you yet. Okay. This one's going to be centered on deep breathing, but we're also going to incorporate a exercise where I'll invite you to take your non-dominant hand, for me that's my left hand, place it on your thigh, and on the in-breath, we're going to take our dominant hand and trace, starting at the base of the thumb. We're going to trace up the thumb on the in-breath, pause at the top for a few moments. Then on the exhale, we trace down the other side. And we're going to repeat that. In-breath, pause, exhale, down the other side. And so I just wanted to demo that first, right? So we'll go in-breath, pause, exhale, down the other side. Breathe in, pause, breathe out, so on and so forth. All the way down to the base of the pinky. And then this is something, if you're doing on your own, you can do as many times over and just start over again at the base of your thumb, but we'll just do it once through together for this practice session. Sound good? All right. So again, if it feels comfortable to you, I'll invite you to close your eyes with me or keep a soft gaze in front of you. And let's just start by some slow, deep breaths in. And hold it. And breathe out. as we're coming out of a different exercise where we were tensing our muscles, just notice any bodily sensations anywhere where maybe you're naturally tensing your shoulders or even your jaw. And see if you can give those parts permission to relax just for this moment. And taking your non-dominant hand, placing it on your thigh, and taking your dominant hand and using your index finger, starting at the base of your thumb, we're going to breathe in together as we trace up our thumb. So breathing in, pausing at the top, and breathe out, tracing down the other side. And we're going to also pause at the bottom. Breathe in, hold at the top, and breathe out, holding at the bottom. Breathe in, hold at the top, and breathe out, holding at the bottom. Breathe in, holding at the top, and breathe out, holding at the bottom. And breathe in, and out. And as you reach the base of your pinky, you can let go of your hands. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. And again, that's one that you can do as many times as you need it. We just did it once for this practice session. And I didn't talk about when we're breathing. We want to focus on breathing like newborn babies, how they naturally breathe with their bellies. We tend to, as we get older, maybe because we're embarrassed, I don't know, we start breathing with our shoulders. So we want to breathe in into our bellies and breathe out using our diaphragm. So, how was that experience for you?
That was more centering because you had the focal point of using the hand.
Yeah. So it felt more centering, using one of our senses, touch in this case. Anyone else?
I agree with him. I like that one a little better than the tense one for me.
Mm-hmm. That one felt better
Yes, it
to
did.
you, yeah.
And one day it may be easier to do one than the other.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say,
Mm-hmm.
may depend on where you are.
Yeah.
Standing, sitting, lying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say this one was not as good for me,
Mm-hmm.
as I move my arm up and down, my right shoulder is not all the best.
Mhm.
So as I go up and down with my dominant hand, it just gets a little bit of some discomfort.
Discomfort there
And that'll distract me from what I'm
from the moment, yeah. It's good to notice those things. I'm glad you're in touch with that.
So Steve, is that shoulder harder for you than the other one? I mean,
it's the one that I've used most.
so, I mean, is it possible in certain situations to just let one become your?
Yeah.
Well, okay, we know that whenever you have an injury, your non-dominant can become your dominant.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, there's no rule here on which,
Makes it
which
easier,
hand.
whatever's less
Yeah.
stressful.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no rule on which hand. It's whatever comes naturally. Yeah. What's that?
That guy up there, the one that's standing with his arms out, he's moving his legs. I keep watching.
Yeah. That's another thing is we're doing these grounding exercises. Some that we won't be able to practice maybe in this moment, or other things that you all mentioned, like going for a walk, right? Or maybe a jog, or just moving your body in some way, or just stretching, right? There's different of these body-based things. It could also be dancing, right? Miriam danced in the Bible, and that was an intuitive way. When I mentioned this morning, before any of these theories ever came out, right? That was just an intuitive way that they already knew how to process the trauma of Egypt naturally. They just pulled out the tambourines and started drumming and dancing and singing, and that came intuitively to them. Yeah.
Another is if you're outside, you can take your shoes and socks off. I'm saying this specifically for Jeff, so he can go out even when it's winter time to get what he needs. But it's called grounding,
Yeah.
and you just go barefooted.
Literally, I mean, right? Literally, and this is
Pick your
again
path
specific to
well.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Specific to Jeff because he can handle it.
Hey, I do it too, Jeff, even in the
But yeah, take your shoes off, take your socks off, and go touch grass.
Let's go practice that right now.
Okay, let's go. I'm ready.
I will watch from the window personally, but maybe when we go back home from Seattle and it's 70 degrees in the summer, I will live stream in and we can do it separately. Oh.
And it does take the positive and introduces the negative. It's good to do before you go to sleep at night.
Yeah. Another one that you can also practice on your own is actually humming along to a song. It could be a tune, it could be whatever, but the vibration from the hum has a soothing effect on the body. So another accessible one, you might do it in public if you don't mind getting weird looks, but you might also just do it in the privacy of your own home. Some other ones, which I won't take the time to do, but mental exercises for like quick in the moment things like counting backwards from 100, or if you're talented enough to do the alphabet backwards, or doing categories like, oh, you can do that, the alphabet backwards. Or other things like, categories, trying to think up of a genre of like, say, movies. It could be comedy, and think of as many comedy films that comes to mind, or it could be a different category, right? Just, again, those are more kind of quick in the moment mental exercises. So, all right. Are we ready to move on? I feel like we've gotten some good practice in. Let's talk about some group agreements. The first one I want to talk about is confidentiality. So what we discuss here and online, right, stays in this space with us. Outside of here, other people's stories are not your story to share. You can share your own experience, but you can't share Jeff's experience, right? That's Jeff's experience to share if he chooses to, unless you were to get permission from Jeff. It's like, hey, Jeff, can I share that story you shared with somebody? And Jeff is like, yeah, that's totally fine. Then that would be okay. The second one is take what you need, leave what you don't. We touched on that a little bit. Not every exercise we did worked for everyone, and that's okay and perfectly normal. Care for your nervous system. So we just learned some ways to do that. And so as we dive deeper today, if something does come up, practice one of these if you want right here, or step out if you need to, or go outside. I talked about sharing from your own experience. I jumped ahead. And then participation is optional, right? Everything we do is volunteer by choice. Does everyone feel like these are agreements we can all give to each other for today? Okay. So what is trauma? Trauma is anything that overwhelms your ability to cope and leaves you feeling unsafe, disconnected, or frozen. So I'll read also in my notes kind of like the official definition, textbook definition, but we'll kind of have our own working definition today, right? So trauma results from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. In other words, when something happens to the body that is too much, too fast, too soon, right? It overwhelms the body and can create trauma. Whenever we hear the words trauma, we think that, that's like the big stuff, right? Like you were physically abused or some other really big, obvious thing. And yes, that falls into that definition. But that is not the only way, right? You can have, quote unquote, right, the perfect childhood and still carry wounds, right? And still carry trauma. And so I want to differentiate between capital T trauma, which is what we think of as like those big things, like assault or a car accident or war or abuse. And then there's lowercase t trauma, which might look like chronic invalidation, right, growing up, neglect, microaggressions, ongoing stress. And so we're going to talk about both of those. Trauma lives in the body. I've mentioned this a number of times, and I think someone over here asked a question and I got ahead of myself, right? Our bodies have a form of knowledge that is different from our cognitive brains. It's the type of knowledge that is experienced in the body as like a felt sense, sometimes of like constricting, releasing, pain, ease, energy, or numbness. And it's a part of our bodies that, again, it's more something that we feel, something that we experience, rather than just something that happens cognitively in the brain. It does involve the brain, and we'll talk about that. Recent studies have shown that our deepest emotions, like love, fear, anger, dread, grief, sorrow, disgust, hope, some of those deeper emotions are connected to a vast number of complex nerves in the body. Neuroscientists call this the wandering nerve or the vagus nerve. It's a complex series of nerves in our bodies that connects from the brainstem to the pharynx, to the chest, to the gut, to the heart, the lungs. Scrolling down in my notes. I like, in this author that I'm quoting from, Resba Menakem, his book, My Grandmother's Hands, I like the way that he calls it. He calls it the soul nerve, and it feels a little bit more fitting. Scientists call it the vagus nerve or the wandering nerve, but he coins it as the soul nerve, and so I'm going to refer to it as that. The soul nerve is connected to a part of the brain that does not use cognition for its reasoning. It doesn't use our prefrontal cortex as part of its negotiation when you're navigating the world. Menakem in his book refers to it as the lizard brain because of how primal the response is. It only understands survival and protection. And it uses one of a handful of responses to protect you when it senses that you might be either in real or perceived danger. The handful of connections, or the handful of commands that it has access to, is fight, flight, or freeze. So the lizard brain, or the amygdala, but I like lizard brain better because I think it just fits more given the way that it operates. The lizard brain, when it perceives that you're in danger, whether it's real or not, before your prefrontal cortex even has the opportunity or the chance to say, no, we're safe, we're good, it has already activated one of these responses. It makes these decisions, right? Whether it's real or perceived, it doesn't even have to be like a real threat. And it can also mean not necessarily a threat to your physical safety, but it can also mean a threat to what you do, what you say, your motivations, or even what you yearn for, right? And so it's also an emotional thing. This, when I talk about trauma and how it lives in the body, this is what I mean by trauma. And that the trauma is the response that is embedded in our nervous systems. It's not the event, right? The event instigated a response. When we refer to trauma, we're talking about that response that lives in the body. So, and by the way, this is not a flaw or weakness. It's actually quite an effective tool of survival and protection. And it's the way that God designed it. And it's also why I have a personal belief that when we are actively in survival mode all the time, right? When we're constantly in fight, flight, or freeze, or we're constantly looking over our shoulders, it is next to impossible to experience a deep connection with God. Not because like God has left us, but because the part of our brain that is activated is only concerned about your safety in that moment, and that is the way God designed it as a protective factor. And so sometimes and I'll get your question in a second, sometimes we get down on ourselves about like, why can't I just feel God in this moment? Or why can't I just pray this away? Or why, and you can fill in the blank. Your trauma response is something that God designed, right, to protect you. And when you're in an environment that is constantly activating that response, it's hard, right, for that line of communication with God to be clear. Things get fuzzy, and then we get down on ourselves that we're bad Christians because we're not experiencing a deeper connection with God. But you also have to consider, what is the environment that you're in, and are you constantly in a trauma response? You had a question.
Was it there prior to sin, or was it there and activated after?
That's a good question. I wonder, yeah, that is a good question. I'm curious what your gut might be telling you based on like what.
But we didn't need it. But it was there for our safety.
I would agree, because when I think of like pre-fall, what would exist that we would need that kind of protection,
Adam could walk right up to it.
What would give us that type of fear and shame? And so I would agree. I think maybe the complex systems, because the intricacy of the body existed in that way, was there, and maybe it became activated when it was needed.
When you needed to find a tree.
Yeah, because immediately, right, after Adam and Eve disobey, God comes into the picture and is like, where are you? And God knows where they are. He's not asking, where are you physically? He's asking, where are you relationally? And there's this distance. And now shame comes into the picture, and pain and deep grief and regret, all things that were not there. Yeah. Did I see another hand over here somewhere? Okay. Good question, though. Yeah.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
In children, stabbed my stepfather when I was 10. Because of what he'd done in the world. You know, and it changed me at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand it, but I knew it had to happen. You know what I mean? I mean, so do children have more of a heightened sense of that? Or, I mean, I'm just kind of wondering how, sorry. I just need to know, because that's not right. No child should ever have to do that. You know, so I wonder, I guess I really don't even know what I wonder. It's kind of, because it changed me as a person, you know, at that age, so.
Yeah, and of course it would. And we'll talk in a moment. I have a few slides where we'll be exploring how trauma impacts how we experience the world. But it sounds to me that you were a terrified child that...
He was trying to kill my mom. He would beat her until she would pass out, and he put her in a tub of cold water until she came to, and it was horrible. I had to hide my siblings, and it was awful. It changed me my whole life, I think. You know, a lot of my decisions are based on that, I think. You know, I knew that was something I could handle. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. And how could it not change you? And to answer your first question, it's a response that exists from the time you're born until it's not more heightened or different because in a child versus an adult, it's the same lizard brain that is operating to protect you. And it knows a handful of responses, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. And I should say rest as well, because it can also activate rest, right? If it perceives that, well, there's no danger.
The response is always to fight.
Yeah.
Just get it away over.
I think it's more, it comes out more like in that way when you've probably been repressing a bunch of abuse for a long time, and all of a sudden it just blows, you know, and you do stuff you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
Same works with alcohol in the system, drugs.
Yeah, and everyone, right, will have a different response, right? Two people can go through the same experience and have completely different traumatic responses to that experience. And it just so happens for you, your lizard brain put you in fight when you were in survival mode. Where was I? We were just talking about how trauma is not an event. It's the response. So after traumatic situations, our soul nerve and the lizard brain may embed a reflexive trauma response in our bodies. And this is what I was mentioning earlier, right? This trauma can get stuck in the bodies and stays stuck until it is addressed. And so when we're talking about those grounding practices that we worked on together, is that it's not a cognitive, like, yes, it involves cognition, but it's not a cognitive thing. That reflexive response lives in the body, and it can be really hard and difficult to stay in those, right, if you don't have active tools to help ground you, or if things become too much, too soon, too fast, and you are reliving that traumatic response in the here and now that may have happened decades ago. It's a way to bring you back into the safety of the here and now. And it teaches the nervous system, thank you for protecting me, for doing what you needed to do to get me to survive that experience. I'm safe now, I've got it from here, right? It's like you're reteaching your nervous system through these body practices that I'm safe now. What happened then is not happening now, right? And I can take it from here. Embedded trauma responses can manifest as fight, right, flee, or freeze, or a combination of constriction, or pain, or dread, or fear, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, reactive behaviors, or any number of other, right, experiences. Trauma can cause you to react to present moments in ways that seem out of proportion with what the moment requires. So if you've ever had like a really emotional reaction to something and you didn't even understand why you were having that response, it means that your history is showing up in the room with you at that moment. And you may not even be aware of it, right? But anytime we have a strong emotional reaction to something in the present, our history is showing up in the room. So these reactions, by the way, they're just the body's way of trying to complete the protective response or action that was thwarted during the original experience, right? You might have wanted to fight or flee, but couldn't. What often happens is that the body will then develop ways to get around that stuck energy. And so sometimes that looks like an extreme reaction. Sometimes it looks like workaholism. Sometimes it looks like avoidance or compulsions or strange dislikes and irrational fears. Over time, these become embedded in the body as standard practices. And when they're repeated over and over again and passed down from generation to generation, they become standard responses in families, communities, and cultures. Right? When we talk about generational trauma, passing that on from generation to generation. And over years and decades, you might even forget the context of the original trauma, and you just have now internalized that response itself. And now it's just your personality. It's like, oh, that's just Uncle Joe at the family reunion. That's just how he is, right? It's just his personality. But really, it's his trauma that may even be out of context, right? And so and that's why I love this quote, right? Trauma in a person, decontextualized over time, can look like personality. All right, so I've given you a lot of information. We've got a few more teaching moments, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll get into something more experiential. So looking at these responses that can manifest in many different ways. Fight can show up as anger and control. Flight can show up as overworking or anxiety. Freeze can look like numbing or disassociation. If you've ever felt like, you were completely disassociated or disengaged from your body, like you were like you were watching things happen to you like a movie. Fawning, we haven't talked about that one, but I'm throwing this one in. That can look like people-pleasing and appeasement. Take a moment with your neighbors, and discuss which responses do you notice in yourself. And I'm not asking you here to go into your trauma with each other. I'm just asking you to talk about what responses do you notice in yourself. Sound good? Yeah. All right. Take a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll continue. It's still on.
Funny, I like that. I haven't seen that much. I feel like, I find reading that sometimes just like
Where is it? Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to something that's called the window of tolerance. So,
I tolerated it.
our window of tolerance is, think of this window as your relationship with the world, right? So, when you're within your window of tolerance, you feel like you can deal with whatever's happening in the moment, right? You might feel some stress or pressure, but it doesn't overwhelm you. It's not too much. It's like the ideal place to be, right? It's where we do our best work. It's where we feel like present and grounded. As when you go through a traumatic experience, right? And that trauma response is that energy is embedded in the body. It impacts your window of tolerance. So look at that window and just like make it that much more narrow. And it's like maybe before the experience you had all this room and it's like, oh man, stuff's coming at me in the world and it's like I can deal with it, I can take it, but like you go through a traumatic experience and that response is embedded in the body, it like narrows your window of tolerance. So now maybe something that was fine before now becomes too much and you now start operating outside of your window of tolerance. And so we tend to go into two spaces. We might go into hyper arousal at the top. I apologize, I know this image is a bit small, but hyper arousal at the top might be feeling anxious, angry, feeling out of control, feeling overwhelmed. Your body maybe wants to fight or run away. All right, it's not something you choose. They're just, these reactions take over. Sometimes not even consciously. So, right, some of us go to hypoarousal, which might be feeling more spacey, zoned out, numb, frozen, right? Your body wants to shut down. It's not something you choose. Again, these reactions just take over. And so think of your window, right, the experiences that you've had in life, and maybe some of the unhealed wound and pains that you're carrying in your body, and that makes your window a little bit narrow.
In other words, what some things might make you tick a little quicker than you normally would.
Remember that moments ago I said whenever we have a reaction to the present moment, right, an emotional response to the present moment that is high or activated, it means our history is showing up in the room. In that moment, we've just gone out of our window of tolerance that's been narrowed by some traumatic experience, and we are operating in that traumatic response because to your lizard brain, it thinks whatever happened, it might have been a smell, right, that triggers it. It might be a sound. It might be somebody's voice. It might be someone that looks like someone, right? It could also be you were at work and someone said something nasty or mean, right? It could be a number of different things. To your lizard brain, that embedded trauma response that never got fully processed is activated because it thinks we are back in the same place we were again a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And it has no recognition of time. It just thinks it's happening again. I need to kick in this response so that I can protect my human, right? And we're operating outside of our window of tolerance. And we might have maybe blown up on someone, or we might like become really try to take control of the situation and try to control everything around us. I want to talk real quick about the concept of clean pain versus dirty pain. This is again from Resma's book, My Grandmother's Hand. Think of clean pain as like healing and growth. It's the type of like uncomfortability that you feel when you know like there's something you like gotta do and you know it's the right thing to do, but you don't want to do it. Like it's uncomfortable, but like you know like if I just step into it, I know it would be so good for me. It's the type of pain that brings about healing and growth. And then there's dirty pain, which is avoidance, reenactment, or like the thing that you need to do, but you distract yourself from it and avoid it. Both are painful. It just depends what kind of pain that you want. And in my experience, dirty pain always ends up being more painful in the end. I think that we all have these questions as we go through life, and we become expert avoiders at facing those and looking at them head on. And at some point, they always come back and demand our attention, right? If we have not acknowledged them, they will come back in some way, shape, or form and demand our attention. I want to talk a little bit about maybe wounds that are not capital T trauma. We talked about capital T trauma, which is like the big, obvious, in your face kind of thing. I want to talk a little bit about lowercase t trauma. I want to talk about these 5 wounds, and these come from a book called The Origins of You. Great book. There's more wounds than these 5, but these are some common ones. Think of these as not like necessarily some big thing that happened as a child. It could have been a subtle thing. It could have been one comment. It could have been sometimes not what was explicitly said, but what was left unsaid in your family system, right, growing up. It could have been a look, right? And these little pain points accumulate over time, and you, as a child, right, we are experts at finding creative ways to meet our emotional needs. And so we adapt in ways to get the validation, the love, or whatever it is that is not being met. And so the first wound I want to talk about is the worthiness wound, right? This wound says, I am not enough. This might have come from maybe parents who were distant, who weren't maybe present in your life. Maybe you always felt like you always had to prove yourself. You always had to get good grades, or you had to perform in order to receive love, but it was never enough. So then you come to believe that you're not enough. A protective behavior that you might have developed as a child to navigate this wound is overachievement, perfectionism, or people-pleasing. Again, because as children, we are experts at finding creative ways to get our needs met. A healing shift that I want to offer from the protective behavior is to shift from overachievement to I'm worthy simply because I exist, not because of what I do or prove. And I think stepping into that is a lot like God's love for us, right? Because God loves us. God celebrates us not for anything that we do, but simply who we are. And so it's a lot like God's love for us. So that's the worthiness wound. Let's talk about the belonging wound. This wound says, I don't fit in. This might have been, maybe you felt like the odd one out in the family, or maybe you had a sibling that had all the attention. Maybe they had other needs that felt greater than yours, and there was no space for you. Or maybe you just felt odd. You felt different from the family, and your primary caregivers were not able to maybe connect with you and meet you where you were at. Some protective behaviors that children or you might have developed to navigate and get this need met is shape-shifting. So being a chameleon, right? Fitting whatever mold you need to fit in order to receive love. Hiding parts of yourself, maybe the parts that you feel like these are the odd parts. These are the parts that I think other people think are weird. And so I'm going to hide these more and amplify these more so that I can receive love. or approval. A healing shift from this is that you are allowed to take up space and belong without changing who you are. You're allowed to take up space and belong without changing who you are. Let's look at the prioritization wound. This wound says, my needs don't matter. Maybe you expressed those needs and they were ignored. There's a number of different ways, right, this wound might develop. A protective behavior is self-abandonment, right? Always going with whatever everybody else wants, right? Never sharing your opinion. It might look like not expressing your needs. Sometimes it even looks like caregiving for other siblings to avoid rejection. Because that's the way that maybe you could receive love. A healing shift from this protective behavior is that your needs are valid and worthy of being acknowledged and met. Your needs are valid and worthy of being acknowledged and met. Let's talk about the trust wound. People will hurt or betray me. I think it's obvious to see maybe places where this wound might activate. Maybe you were hurt or betrayed by an important caregiver in your life, intentionally or unintentionally, right? These things don't mean that our parents were bad people. They were doing the best that they had. And remember that they're just bigger kids in this life that had their needs were also unmet. And so they never had the tools maybe to even give you what you needed. It's not necessarily an excuse, but it does give context, right? So trust wound. People will hurt me. A protective behavior you might have developed might have looked like withdrawing. Hyper independence, like I can do this myself. Testing others, right? Like throwing out some sort of test, a relational test, like, if they stick around for this, then maybe I'll trust them. Maybe I'll let them in past this wall. The hyper-independence one is interesting because I think, as my wife mentioned earlier, it can often get praised because it's like you're resilient, and there are some like good sides to this that can sometimes form, but also at the cost of something else. And so hyper-independence, which sometimes can be praised, can actually be a trauma response, right, from one of these wounds of learning that the trust maybe was broken too many times. So a healing shift for this wound is that it's safe to ask for support and let others earn your trust. It's safe to ask others for support and let others earn your trust. Lastly, the safety wound. The world is unsafe. The world is unsafe. This might come from maybe you had an unsafe childhood. And so, yes, your world is unsafe. A protective behavior to adapt, right, might have looked like control. If I can control my environment, then I can ensure that I'm safe. Or anxiety, feeling anxious. Hypervigilance, always looking over your shoulder, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Or avoidance altogether. A healing shift is you can anchor yourself in safety and build inner regulation. Right? You can anchor yourself. We looked at some of these kind of grounding practices to help anchor us in safety. I'm safe. I'm okay. Real quick, I'm curious to hear which wounds maybe resonate most with you. And you don't have to share any specific stories, just which one of these is like, oh yeah, I can see parts of this or a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And this isn't necessarily something too that it's like it's one or the other. Sometimes it's multiple. Sometimes it's one here and then another one there, right? There's no like clean path. It's all right. Wounds are messy. Worthiness, hyper independence, yeah. What else resonates?
RBA, it's 1, 2, and 4.
Mm-hmm.
That's 4 and 5.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you all for sharing. Yes, you did. um, I'm mindful of our time. I'm wondering, is this a good time for a 5-minute bathroom break and then resume for the more practical? Does this feel like a good time?
Yes.
Okay, because this feels like a good transition point. So let's resume. It's 3:20. Let's resume at 3:25. We'll talk about the practical stuff. I'll give you a little bit of homework that you'll take home. And then tomorrow we'll talk about the homework at our last session. 3. Okay, I'm going to invite everybody to come back inside. Invite everyone to come back inside. We'll talk a little bit about your homework. I know y'all thought you were done with school.
Every day is school.
Yeah, we'll talk about the homework for tonight, and then tomorrow morning we'll get to integrate that homework and talk about it in our last. There will be a quiz. It's pass fail. Okay. What is your next wound? What will it be? Okay. So, wounds and protection. We just talked about the 5 wounds, which we looked at how, right, mistrust and hyper-independence might be a protective behavior for one of these wounds. What I want you to think about is what protective behaviors no longer serve you. So, and what I mean by that is that as a child, right, you developed a protective behavior to navigate your world, to get your needs met, etc. And it served a purpose at one point, but you are likely in a season of your life where maybe that protective behavior no longer serves you. In fact, it might be inhibiting you. And so think about these wounds, and especially as I go into the homework in the next slide, as what ways are these wounds no longer serving you? And is it time to say, hey, thank you for helping me navigate. Thank you for helping me survive. I know where this wound comes from, but I got it from here. I talked about one of my wounds this morning and kind of that process for me. So a little piece of homework, this is what I'm going to assign for you to do tonight, is what's called a genogram. Chris is going to come around and pass out this symbol sheet, which is going to be like your key. A genogram is a visual map of your family relationships and trauma patterns. And so think of like a family tree, right? A family tree is a little bit more, nice, and like you get to look at your entire family, and it's like, who's who and what's what in your family. This is not as pleasant or nice feeling as that kind of a family tree, because you're going to be mapping out your family, but you're going to be looking at like relational patterns and generational trauma. So it's a little bit more of that clean pain we were talking about, right? It's not as nice and bubbly as a regular family tree. You will notice, and I'll put it up on this next slide, this key, by the way, is from an article, and we'll go over these symbols. Not all of these symbols will pertain to your experience. This is a general copy and paste from an article that I use, and so some of it will be relevant to you, and so use it, and some of it won't be. You do not need to incorporate all of these. And in some cases, you may find that, hey, there's something in my family that none of these really capture, and you know what? You can create your own symbol. And you can have your own key and be like, okay, this symbol means this in my family that's not represented in this key, right? So these symbols are just helpful ways of helping you map out the family. So you have symbols for male and female. You have symbols that depict relationship. And so if you go to the section that says family relationships, you have a solid black line that depicts these two people are married. The dotted black line describes the quality of that relationship. You see that they're in a committed relationship or a casual relationship, or it might have just been a sexual relationship. The next one, relationship comments, The two slanted lines depicts that a divorce happened, or a separation, or widowed, or cohabitation. On the next side, we see emotional relationships. So each line, again, depicts something different. You have normal relationships, there's indifference, there's very close, there's conflict, there's neglect. In the box that says, where it says children, this is where, so you start out with parents, and then you have a line between mom and dad that describes the quality of that relationship. And then beneath that, you have lines to the children. And then you can have additional lines to each parent from each child that describes the quality of the relationship from that child with each parent. And then you can have really as many generations as you want. But for the purposes of just getting started on this, only go back to parents, maybe grandparents if you're feeling zealous. But I'm going to say only go back to parents, right? Your primary caregivers, down to you and your siblings. I think this can be really overwhelming if we try to do too much too fast. This is something you can always add on to, but start with just parents. I want to look at an example of this just to get you started. So in this example, we see that this shows a few generations. So we see above the top line, so the square.
Do we have a pointer, Pastor?
Oh, do we have a pointer? Pastor Chris? I think he beat you to it. Sorry, Jeff. It's not personal. Okay, can we all see that? Perfect. So we see here, over here in this is actually the marriage relationship. These are the parents. These are grandparents. So this is a few more generations than what I'm asking you. I'm only asking you to do your parents and then your siblings down here. If you want to go back to grandparents, you can, but it might get overwhelming. So you don't need to overdo it. But in this example, we do have grandparents. So this is grandpa and grandma. We see that they had a son. And son was married to his first relationship here, which we see a blue line and a break in it, which means if we look at our key, that means they were estranged. They have become estranged at some point in the relationship. So son over here, first relationship, they had one child together. They had a son here who is half siblings with these other children in his second marriage over here. You see a dotted line from this child to mom, which the dotted line says that they're distant from each other. So not a strong relationship. This line over here, divorced. So they're divorced and they're estranged from each other, so there's no contact. We also see here an additional, it looks like in this example, this is what I mean where you can create your own sign. This person here said, I need something to depict mental health history. So the star means that mom was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and alcohol abuse. Dad also abused alcohol, and son also was diagnosed with bipolar. So this is where they got a little creative here and said, I'm going to make some more symbols to depict my family because, right, this is not going to capture it all. Over here, the box with the X means that this grandpa is deceased. You can see that in your key. And then we have a line here with the X that depicts grandma was widowed, but grandma's still alive, right? Grandpa died, right? They had 2 children. And this is over here, his second marriage. This double blue line here means that this relationship, they're very close. So they have a good relationship. They had 3 children together. And in here, they didn't, set of twins and then a daughter over here. They didn't go as far as depicting what is the relationship like between daughter and dad? What about daughter and mom? What about twins and dad, twins and mom? Right? So you'll do that. What is your relationship like with your siblings? And what is your relationship like with your parents? And again, we're just doing back to our parents. You don't have to go back to grandparents. You can eventually, but just for the purposes of what we're doing together, just going back to parents is where we're starting. You can always build on later. Let's see. Any questions on that?
Which one are we supposed to fill in?
You're drawing your own with your own family. This is your cheat sheet for the symbols, as well as, again, this has a wide variety, but not all of these cheat codes will fit your family system. So you can, again, create your own symbols to depict. Maybe there's something in your relationship that you're like, none of these capture that. So I'm going to create my own symbol, and I know for me what that means, right? So you can create. So this is your cheat code, but you will build this out for your own family system. And again, we're only going back to your parents and then your siblings. Yes, but this is just your cheat code. It kind of tells you the order. It's like oldest siblings on the left, youngest siblings on the right. So over here, that would mean that these are the younger siblings, right? This was from the first marriage, older. I guess they did it different here, but for yours, you can organize oldest on the left, youngest to the right. Any questions on that?
In your example,
Yeah.
you just have the immediate spouse's relationship that's kind of filled in.
Uh-huh.
The other, well, I guess just the relationship between the grandparents and then as they relate to the children, but not to parent to child.
Yeah, this one does not have parent to child, but you will do that for your own family system because you're primarily focusing on parent to child. I'm not asking you to do grandparents on this one.
Still using these same symbols for that?
Yes, exact same symbols, but you would just draw the line between the child and the parent.
Okay.
So you would go, if this was you over here and you wanted to depict what's your relationship like with your mom, you would draw a line between you and mom or a line between you and dad.
Right.
And also a line between you and siblings. What's your relationship like with them?
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions on that? It's all clear as mud, as they say. So that is your homework. Tonight, there's 2 pieces to your homework. You're going to pick one of the grounding exercises that you liked to practice on your own before you do the start on your genogram. Does that make sense? So you're both practicing a grounding technique, and then you'll do the genogram. And then tomorrow when we come back, we'll talk about it and what does it mean, and finish out our time together. I'd love to end our time for today with what's called a loving kindness exercise. We've done a lot of heavy lifting today, so I'm going to give you one more exercise that you can practice. It's called the loving kindness exercise. If you feel comfortable, I'll invite you again to close your eyes or keep a soft gaze in front of you. And we're just going to take 3 collective deep breaths together, breathing in through the nose and hold it and breathe out. And breathe in. And hold. And breathe out. And breathe in. And hold. And breathe out. As you continue breathing on your own, I want you to imagine someone in your life that you are close with. It could be a friend, it could be a mentor, it could be a teacher, it could be family, it could even be a stranger, maybe someone that you've only met a few times but have a deep appreciation for or inspired by. See if you can bring a picture of that person in your mind. Sometimes if it's hard to bring up their picture, you can maybe imagine them doing an activity they love, like riding their bike or going for a walk. And as you bring their image to your mind, we're going to send them 3 blessings, 3 wishes. And I'll invite you to silently repeat these after me. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you be at peace. And let's just send them those blessings one more time. That person in your life that you appreciate or admire or are close with, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at peace. Notice how it felt to send them those wishes. Was it easy? Did you notice maybe a smile come across your face as you wished that person well? You can let go of their image now. And now I want to invite you to bring up your own image in your mind. Sometimes this can be hard. I like to imagine that I'm just looking at the mirror. So I'm looking at my own reflection, looking back at me. And when you bring up that image, I'll invite you now to send yourself those 3 blessings. May I be happy. May I be healthy. And may I be at peace. May I be happy. May I be healthy. And may I be at peace. And just notice how that feels. Was it easy? Was it hard to do that? You can begin to let go of that image. And we're going to end with 3 more collective deep breaths. Breathing in through the nose. And hold. And breathe out through the mouth. And breathe in. And hold. And breathe out. And one more deep breath in. And hold. And breathe out. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes. Okay. That's all I have for you for today. I'd love to hear real quick from this side, because I haven't heard as much from this side. How was this experience for you? What the exercise we just did? Felt awesome?
Very interesting.
Very interesting. I'll take it. Yeah, anybody else from this side? All right. Anybody from this side?
In this last exercise?
Yeah. I'll get you in a second.
I found it so easy to do it for somebody else, but harder to do it for myself.
Easy to do for someone else, hard to do for yourself. Mm-hmm. I saw you back there.
Obviously, the whole afternoon, it kind of made a whole bunch of things in my by speaking it out, and also, like she said, trying to find myself was a bit of an issue.
Yeah, yeah. But connecting dots. Yeah, I see your hand. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Thank you all for coming and playing ball. I know that was like a lot of information. I said that we were going to be diving deep, and we did just that. But I hope it's all tools that you can take with you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eddie. I'm glad that to see the response that you are finding this valuable and helpful, and I believe, and we collectively believe together, and part of the reason why we invited Eddy and Natalie is because our church board, our elders, and everyone involved said, hey, we should really reflect on not just our physical health, not just our spiritual health, but really what is going on in our hearts and our minds, and are we self-aware? Because it's interesting. Let's see. Everyone here in the room is Seventh-day Adventist, as far as I can tell, and we have a very distinct belief that is called the investigative judgment. And that whole idea comes down to this, of being self-aware, being open and honest with God. And Jesus is saying, I want to be your therapist, your counterpart in this. I want you to self-examine and look at what is going on in your heart and in your life. And then Jesus invites us into the process of healing and the process of sanctification and getting better, and so that we may experience healing not just one day, but all the way through life. And that is the beauty of the gospel, that all of this, that Jesus has created us so intricately, and all of this is together. I just so appreciate Eddy and Natalie sharing their expertise with us, and as you participate in all of this, as you do the homework, and really do the homework, in my own life, there is something that I thought they might mention, but they didn't, but that's okay. It's called the ACEs score, which is Adverse Childhood Experiences. What is it? A score out of 10, and the higher the score, the more adverse experiences you had. My score, and I'll just share my own story here. My score is at about 7. I had a lot of adverse childhood experiences. And doing the genogram a couple of years ago, for me, has placed into perspective my relationships with my grandparents, my parents, my siblings, and I even did my cousins. Talk about an overwhelming experience. It was overwhelming. However, once I was able to see that all in front of myself, I could see, okay, this is what's happening here. And then when we go back to, we don't do Thanksgiving in my family because we're South African, we don't really have that there. But when we go back to family gatherings, now I know that feeling that I get when Uncle so-and-so comes, and that uneasy feeling that I might have with him, now I know where it's coming from. And I can better manage, and that's just my experience, but I can better manage my interaction with him. So that's just my story that I wanted to just share with you, sort of just kind of witnessing to the power and the effect that these tools have, that they're not just, it's not just head knowledge, it's not just theoretical, it's practical and it's life-changing. And so I encourage you in your own experience that you would do the work. It is totally worth it. And we are here to support you. Myself, as the pastor here, I am here to support you and walk with you. So reach out, be in touch, and we will do that. I'm going to invite you to pray with me, and we'll close out. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your love and for your goodness and the way that you love us and the way that you desire goodness in our lives. I pray that you will be in a very special way with each person who is here this afternoon, those who watched online, those who were with us throughout the day. We pray that your blessings of goodness, of happiness, the things that we wished ourselves a few moments ago, that we will receive those blessings also from you. Because, Lord, we know that you love us, you chose us, you are on our side, and we thank you for that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We'll see you 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Please join us. Have a good afternoon.